this fall. And I'm really looking forward to sharing with you what I know about the painter and print artist, Katsushka Hoksai. Okay, next. As I'm sure many of you know, Hokusai is the designer of the print, The Great Wave, maybe the most recognizable image in all of Japanese art. It shows this giant wave bearing down on 3 small fishing boats with Mount Fuji rising in the distance. It can certainly be appreciated for the sheer brilliance of its design, and it has been ever since it was first published in 1831. Okay, now I need the 3rd slide. The Great Wave has provided inspiration for modern artists, East and West. And one of the examples of that is the woodcut you can see on the upper left there. And today you can find this design on almost anything you can imagine, from beach towels to backpacks to the sides of buildings. And now you can even buy a Great Wave face mask. Okay, next slide. But what did this design mean to the people of Hokusai's own time? And what can it tell us about Hokusai himself? In this course, we'll take a deep dive into the artist, his art, and his times. We'll explore the context in which Hokusai worked, the culture of the city in which he lived, his place in the general history of printmaking, the impact of Western art and domestic travel, and the new concept of the artist that was just then coming into being. To that end, we will also take a look at Hokusai's contemporaries, especially the ukiyo-e artist Hiroshige. And then the last slide. But the major focus will be on Hokusai. We can get some sense of the man in this print, which is labeled a self-portrait. It doesn't necessarily represent the way Hokusai actually looked, but more how he wished to present himself. He shows us a fisherman, content with his life and in tune with his surroundings, enjoying a pipe after labor well done. His gaze, though, draws our eyes up to 2 poems written at the top, one by Hokusai, and the other by his daughter. And we'll also look at some work that his daughter did. The poems refer to Hokusai securing a very important, prestigious art commission. While he wasn't a fisherman, Hokusai was indeed part of the commoner class, but he had a tremendous ambition and enormous talent and incredible energy that enabled him to rise well beyond his humble beginnings and to count even the nobility among his fans. He was very concerned with the idea of immortality. And so I can't help but think he would be delighted to see that his work lives on, even at Encore Learning. My hope is that you'll come away from this course having enjoyed many wonderful paintings and prints, and with a better understanding of this complex artist and the dynamic era in which he lived. I look forward to seeing all of you and to hearing your thoughts and reactions to what you hear and see. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Barbara. Hope you can see me, Encore friends. The course that I'm going to be teaching here really focuses on 4 main musical forms. By the way, I should mention, if you can see me, I want to point out that I do have the Hokusai print behind me on the wall, and that was coincidental. But I just wanted to call out Carol Morland to that fact. The 4 musical forms that we're going to be focusing on are the dance suite, the overture, the concerto, and the symphony. And each of these forms over many years experienced, not to say improvement, but drift and change that we can learn quite a bit about by examining sample works from each of these categories. The dance suite Started just as a collection of often folk tunes meant to be repeated infinitely or ad nauseum for actual dancing. And then over time that became somewhat fancified, citified maybe, and turned into orchestral suites of dances, the Baroque dances, but also even sort of similar forms by Stravinsky, Bartók, and other later composers. The overture has been from the beginning, of course, literally an opening, but an instrumental prelude to an opera. But then over time, this turned into a sort of a Cliff's Notes version of the opera in certain circumstances, and then also diverged into a sort of tone poem, which then broke off and became its own separate form. And if we think of Richard Strauss in the 19th century, his magnificent and overwhelming tone poems. The concerto is a musical form that's meant to highlight a specific performer or small group of performers, which is sometimes called a concerto grosso. And it also focuses on a particular instrumental color or colors. And the concerto developed, again, from the Baroque starting point of composers, including Vivaldi and Corelli, through the great romantic concertos, specifically for violin, cello, and piano, and other instruments, and then on to the great proliferation of modern concertos. And this is one of the forms that has maintained its place in the repertoire even up to the present day. And then finally, the symphony and string quartet, which are designed to really go into the architecture of music. That's the specialty of these particular forms. The symphony turning into a sort of stock form of four movements, but never stock in its application. In fact, what's most amazing are the many forms. So I guess to the extent that we are paying homage to evolution here, we can say that these are varied and wonderful forms of the symphony. And the string quartet is, in a sense, a miniature version of the symphony. So we will focus in on some of the let's say, musical elements that are used architecturally in these larger forms. As always, the courses that I teach for Encore, I'm teaching them kind of at the grace and indulgence of the Arlington Philharmonic, my sponsor organization, and they are planning a very interesting program this year, interesting as you can imagine under the circumstances, but highlighting some imaginative approaches. So if you're fans of the Philharmonic, please keep posted and keep in touch with us. And finally, always my courses with Encore are significantly driven by the wonderful questions, the sequiturs and non sequiturs that come from the class, and I welcome that. We always have many returning people to my classes, which I love. We also always have new people. The main thing I hear people often say is that they don't know anything about music but, and I love that. So if you know nothing about music, please come to this class. Thank you so much. Back to you, Barbara.
Thank you.